The history of women in Formula One. Formula One auto racing has been around since the 1920s, officially recognized in 1946. The list of legendary drivers that have emerged over the many decades of the sport's existence is impressive. Names like Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, and Mario Andretti are some of the most famous names in professional sports history. Although each of the men named are completely different drivers, with unique styles and methods of preparation. There is one thing, however, that all of the previous F1 champions have in common: they are all men. Why are there no female drivers in F1 racing? What is preventing women from competing with the men or on their own in an all-women division of F1? Through analysis of the history of the sport, we will attempt to explain this mystery, with the intentions of inspiring future changes. First, let us end the falsehood that women are not allowed in F1. There are no provisions, rules, or clauses that actually keep female drivers from entering and racing in F1 competitions. In fact, there have been 5 women who have raced in Formula One. That is correct, only 5 women since 1946 have competed as professional drivers in Formula One, 2 out of the 5 qualified as starters, and no women have raced since the 1970s. Discrimination and prejudice. Discrimination in sports, sadly, is nothing new. F1 is no stranger to having men verbally and physically taunting and abusing women, in an attempt to intimidate them. To date, only 2 women, both Italians, have qualified and raced in the series: Maria Teresa de Filippis, who entered 5 races in 1958 and 1959 and qualified for 3 of them, with a highest finish of 10th, and Lella Lombardi, who entered 17 races over 3 seasons from 1974 to 1976, and qualified for 12. She is the only woman to score points in Formula One, when she finished 6th at the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix and scored half a point after the race was cut short. A race director prevented pioneer female driver de Filippis from entering a race, saying, "The only helmet a woman should use is the hairdresser." Sports often mirror society and the trends that are being followed, positive and negative. Back in history, women were not allowed to vote, gain employment, enlist in the army, or compete in sports. The policy of societies all over the world was to exclude women from competing against their male counterparts, mostly because women were viewed as physically inferior to men. The same held true in F1 racing. It was widely believed that women cannot possibly stand up to the rigors of racing, let alone beat a man in a race. The truth is, there is not that much interest among women in racing professionally. Part of the problem is that young women have no other female F1 drivers to idolize and aspire to be like. There are only a small percentage of girls who grow up wishing to race cars. Other theories try to involve science, specifically the difference in strength between a man and woman of similar age, height, weight, etc. Although it is true that women have 30% less muscle than men, racing F1 has not been proven to have any particular physical limitations that a woman cannot endure. So even if women aren't able to match men physically, that doesn't mean they can't be successful. Endurance and mental training needs to be the focus alongside being given a competitive car and a supportive team. Today, cars have been so technologically enhanced that the more experienced drivers say they are physically the easiest they have driven. And until now, the latter has always been the problem. As previously mentioned, of the 5 women in the history of F1 who had a chance in F1, 3 failed to qualify for a race, simply because they drove cars that simply weren't good enough. Funding is a major issue for women who do dream of becoming F1 drivers. For female drivers, finding sponsorships and building a career are more difficult than for men because of perceptions that racing is not for women. Role models need to be present. Currently there are a small handful of strong female role models at the top of motorsport now, like Susie Wolff, Catherine Legge, Claire Williams and Lena Gade. These women most certainly serve as some inspiration to the young girls who desire a career in auto racing. Today young women need to act like their predecessors did back in the early years of F1. Current research shows an increase in the demand and interest among women in racing. One such poll estimated approximately 85% out of 331 responses said there needs to be more done to get women involved in motorsport, 15% disagreed. Those 15% didn't provide a reason why there shouldn't be more done. There needs to be a talent pool created in order for females of the future to have the "if she can, I can" attitude, especially in motorsport, providing the fantastic and courageous role models we have today. If it can be done in other sports, it can be done in motorsport too. People will be prejudiced, that's the barrier we have to cross, but in years to come, it shouldn't be an issue when it becomes the norm. The women that have competed would rather people accepted the change now, rather than later, because no matter what happens, more and more women will join motorsport. The bottom line is this: as society has progressed, so should motorsports. Gone are the archaic thoughts that F1 racing is physically too challenging for women, or that women have no interest. Sports as a whole, but auto racing in particular, needs to take a step in the right direction and move motorsport forwards to the future with the Rubik's Cube that makes up the world today. Did you know that women could compete in F1 racing? Let me know in the comments. Also, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to make my day.